Look at that. Good morning, everybody. We are live. Wow, the wonders of modern technology. We are now live streaming to YouTube. So welcome to everybody who's joining us in person, and welcome to everybody who's checking us out on the John Lavenia Success Mastermind YouTube channel. Welcome to the general session. It is Wednesday, July 6th, 2022. Stuart Wilde, your host here, trading places with my good friend Glenn Henderson, who covered for me yesterday. Thank you so much, Glenn. I hear you did an amazing Independence Day chat talk with everybody, and so I'll have to watch the replay for that. So thanks again, and I'm glad to be here with you guys. As most of you here, I am an entrepreneur. I'm a student of success mindset and personal development and human empowerment. And I am grateful to be here and have this platform to share some concepts and ideas and talk about some cool stuff with you guys here at the Mastermind. And as always, I am grateful for your input, your insight, and hearing what you guys have to say about what I have to say today. Good morning, Ingrid. And so today, I'm going to ask you not to be super studious, but today's going to be, we're going back to esoterica. So about a month ago, we did a cool Tuesday session on the 7 stages of spiritual alchemy and personal transformation. And Glenn, I was thankful for you being there and your input, and John, you as well. And I think most of the rest of you guys were here for that. And then 2 weeks ago, we did a session on thinking fast and slow. And so we got a little bit about brain science and psychology and the croc brain and the different ways that we think and make decisions. And so I'm heading back to the land of esoterica. And so today we're going to talk about something that I've really wanted to talk about for pretty much the whole time that I've been on the Mastermind here. And John and I have had several side discussions about the 7 principles of Hermeticism. And every time, something about transformation or transmutation would come up in either Napoleon Hill's book or any of the other books that we were reading, many of these things would bring up these different principles for me. So I wanted to kind of coalesce all that, put it together in a nice little package that we can chat about, and I'll share some of my insights on this stuff on Hermeticism and the 7 principles of Hermeticism. And so without further ado, I'm going to share my screen here and put together a cool little presentation for you guys. And here we go. Give me a thumbers if you can see that. Very nice. Here we go. The 7 Hermetic principles for self-mastery. Now, you guys know that not only am I a fan of human empowerment and personal development, but I'm also a fan of history, philosophy, religion, ancient cultures, ancient religions. And as we've been reading all of our business success mindset books and reading about things like the law of attraction, I always go back in time. I'm like, oh, I remember hearing something like this in ancient Greece or ancient Egypt or in ancient Hermeticism. So I really wanted to connect the dots with you guys today about some of the stuff that we that we see as kind of modern law of attraction, business success mindset. And yet I want to go back to the roots of some of this stuff, and hopefully you'll be as jazzed as I am about it all. So here we go. Hold on. And so I will ask, as we're doing some of this stuff, that if you do have pen and paper handy, as I go through these 7 principles, you don't have to, whatever, but, take some notes about, what, as I go through each of these slides, if something comes up for you about what that, how you would interpret that, because really I'm a student like you guys, right? And I'm not here to like tell you anything. I'm here to maybe share some insight. But I want to hear your insight. So that's kind of where we're at with this. And of course, like everything else, I kind of like to do a little background, a little history. Maybe a month ago, when we did our mental alchemy and spiritual alchemy, we talked a little bit about Hermes Trismegistus. And so I won't go too much into this, but this is where we get the concept or the term Hermeticism and the philosophy of Hermeticism. And Hermes Trismegistus was both an actual person, but also kind of a mythical figure. And so before we went any farther, I really wanted to kind of separate the man from the myth, okay? So the myth is that he was called Thoth Hermes, or Thoth, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And he was identified as the ancient Egyptian god Thoth, who was the god of writing and wisdom and the moon and education and things like that. And he was depicted as the ibis with the beak. And so the beak of the ibis was representative of the moon, and that's why he was considered the god of the moon. And then he, and this ancient Egyptian god supposedly was really like the first Egyptian god that brought knowledge from, and a lot of people say maybe from ancient Atlantis, other people, if you're subscribed to ancient alien theory, then maybe that's where some of that ancient knowledge and wisdom came from. And then he was associated with the ancient Greek god Hermes, and again was called Thoth Hermes. And in this mythological version of Hermes, he was also a contemporary of Abraham from thousands and thousands of years ago, 5,000-6,000 years ago. But the historical record puts him about 500 BC in Hellenistic Alexandria. He predates Aristotle, Socrates, and Plato, and had really a major influence on Western religion, Western philosophy, and is known as the father of science, alchemy, philosophy, mathematics, geometry, astronomy. Like, this guy had such an impact on everything that it's pretty amazing, and no wonder that that he became sort of this mythological figure, because he really had a major influence on every aspect of learning as all these things were starting to pop up. So as a philosophy, Hermeticism is essentially a fusion or a synthesis of ancient mysticism from three major schools. So you have the ancient Egyptian mystery schools, which took place in Memphis, Egypt, near the Great Pyramid. There was a school of Osiris, there was a school of Isis, there was a school of Horus. And these mystery schools in Egypt lasted like 3,000 years. And all the learned people in the ancient world traveled to ancient Egypt to study with these ancient masters, priests, and priestesses, essentially. Then you get the ancient Greek mysteries, which are known as the Eleusinian mysteries, and they have the greater and lesser mysteries. And that's all based on the story of Persephone's descent into Hades. And they would kind of recreate this journey into the underworld. And again, all the major players at that time, all the heavy hitters, all were initiates into the Eleusinian mysteries. Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, Pythagoras, all those people all went and were initiates in these mysteries. And if you told anybody what happened during these initiate rites, it was revealing those secrets was punishable by death. Pretty crazy stuff. And then also a combination with ancient Judaic mysticism, Kabbalah, which is this cryptic interpretation of the Torah, essentially using what's called the Tetragrammaton, the four Hebrew letters, Yud, He, Vav, He, which is where we get the name Yahweh, or Yehovah in Hebrew. And there's like numerology and astrology and a very esoteric, disciplined method of thought. It's essentially taking the Old Testament and reading it in a whole different way to get a whole different message. If you heard of things like the Bible codes and things like that, that's what a lot of the Kabbalah is based on. The ancient Greek mysteries also took place for about 2,000 years, right? So when we're talking about like Happy Birthday America, 246 years, right? Just put that into perspective, that these people were, doing these ancient rites for thousands of years. The concept, some concepts in Hermeticism is interesting, right? So Hermetic means secret or sealed, right? And, when you hermetically seal something, like you get the plastic bags that are melted and hermetically sealed, right? That comes directly from this concept of secret knowledge, hidden knowledge. The word occult, which I think a lot of people have negative connotations with, and maybe rightly so, but occult really comes from an astrological, an astronomical term called occluded. So essentially an eclipse is when one celestial body occludes another, it hides another. So occult really means hidden. So when you talk about like occult knowledge, occult wisdom, that's what this Hermeticism is, because only the initiates were able to participate and understand these things. And then I'll make a difference between what I would call occult knowledge and the occult, right? Because you tend to hear about, a student of the occult, and that could range into some dark stuff. But when I talk about occult knowledge, I'm really just saying stuff that was kind of hidden from the masses, and you had to kind of be in the club in order to be privy to that information. And then there's this concept, which is really the primal concept in Hermeticism, which is called Priscia Theologia, and it means ancient theology. Hermes thought that there was one true religion that was given by God to humanity, and then all the other religions, all kind of have this golden thread that run through all the major religions in the world, right? And we could probably think about those things, right? Love thy neighbor, do unto others, right? All the kind of basic concepts that pretty much all the religions try and teach. Be good to each other, don't steal, don't hurt each other, be a good person, right? So that's kind of the concept of the Priscia Theologia. And then there are two major Hermetic works. One is called the Emerald Tablet, or the Tabula Smaragdina, and this was discovered in 1st century Anatolia, or what is now Turkey, by a guy named Belinus, who then became somebody named Apollonius of Tyana, and that's essentially in what is now modern Turkey. And the book and so supposedly this guy Belinus found a golden statue of Hermes, and he found this this emerald tablet with this ancient inscription on it, and he translated into Arabic in this book called the Kitab Sir al-Khalika, which is from about 600 to 800 AD, which translates to the Book of the Secret of Creation. And then it was eventually translated into Latin. And then check this, Isaac Newton and all these alchemists in the 14, 15, 1600s were translating their version of what's called the Emerald Tablet. And you can check it out. Isaac Newton has a pretty cool translation for this. I call this one of the root texts of humanity because it's so ancient and it really conveys some incredible nuggets of wisdom. It's literally a 14-line poem, if you would, or treatise. And this is what the ancient alchemists believe contains the secret of transmutation of lead to gold. For me, you've heard me say that I believe that alchemy is essentially a metaphor. When people talk about turning lead into gold, I really believe that it's more about the perfection of the human soul, or transmuting the dross, as our friend Glenn said a few weeks ago, the unwanted, the impure, into the golden, divine inspiration of an expression of humanity. And so the second one is called the Corpus Hermeticum. That was also about the 1st century. It's a compilation of 13 Hermetic texts. This was rediscovered at Nag Hammadi in Egypt, which is what's called the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's part of this Gnostic library. And this is the source of the 7 Hermetic principles that then, if you've read the Kabbalion, or if you haven't, 1908 book, which was really a predecessor to Think and Grow Rich and a lot of these personal development books, this is how this information got infused and embedded into personal development and prosperity consciousness. And so when we read things like you were born rich, or Wayne Dyer stuff or Neville Goddard stuff. This is really where how this stuff made its way into prosperity consciousness, success mindset. And I'm going to flat out say this is the origin of the law of attraction, and you'll see why in a moment. Okay, so this is a replica of what's considered the Emerald Tablet. It's ancient combination of like ancient Greek and Coptic script that then got translated into Arabic, and that eventually got translated into Latin. So it's this 14-line treatise, and of course I'm not going to read the Latin with you, but I will do this cool little translation with you guys. And take a peek at this, because this is like some of the first references of some of the things that we know as prosperity consciousness. So the first line is, "It is true without untruth, certain and most true," meaning this is the truth, right? And I read a translation that also said, "This is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth." And this is probably where that made its way into our court system. Check this, see if this sounds familiar. That which is below is that which is like that which is above, and that which is above is like that which is below. By these things are made the miracles of one thing, right? So this is the first reference of the principle of correspondence, meaning as above, so below, right? We say it all the time, as above, so below, but we don't necessarily know where it came from. But this came from 1st century BC, and probably thousands of years even before that from ancient Egypt. And as all things are and come from one, by the meditation of one, so all things are born from this unique thing by adaptation. The sun is the father and the moon is the mother. So this 14 lines here supposedly has the secrets of the creation of the universe, right? And I'm not, obviously people have spent thousands of years trying to decode this. I'm not going to get into like, every little thing about it, but you've got the male and the female principle. You've got the power of creation in here. You've got the as above, so below concept. You've got the one power. Its force or power. It is the father of all things. Its force or power remains entire. It is converted into earth. So this is where the alchemists believe that this is also the secret of turning lead into gold, right? Because it's got all this separate the earth from the fire, the subtle from the gross, gently with great industry. It climbs from the earth and descends from the sky and receives the force of things superior and things inferior. You will have by this way the glory of the world, and all obscurity will flee from you. Oh, here's number 10. It is the power strong with all power, for it will defeat every subtle thing and penetrate every solid thing. In this way the world was created. From it are born wonderful adaptations, of which the way here is given. This is why I have been called Hermes Trismegistus, having 3 parts of the universal philosophy, and this is what I have called the solar work is complete. So interesting. Again, we could spend a lifetime decoding this, but I just wanted to share that with you. So that's the major, and Mandy, if you wanted to see that again or whatever, I will upload this if you guys are interested in seeing this. But of course, you can always look up the Emerald Tablet. Now there is something called the Emerald Tablets of Tote, and don't be confused. That is a more modern, let's say channeled kind of new agey version of things. The thing that I just read to you is absolutely an ancient codex. So here you go, the 7 Hermetic principles, okay? And most of you know these, maybe not all together, maybe not have seen them all together in this list like this, but we all know, we have all studied these things. And so here they are all in one happy little hermetically sealed package, okay? So we have the principle of mentalism, the principle of correspondence, the principle of vibration, the principle of polarity, the principle of rhythm, the principle of cause and effect, and the principle of gender. Okay, now I'll go through each of these, and this is really where I wanted you guys to just kind of jot down what comes to your mind as we go through this, okay? So the principle of mentalism has to do with the fact that the universe is mental, right? All is mind. And not only that, but in the Kabbalion, it says the all is mind, not just all like everything, but the all. And he's talking about infinite intelligence, right? Or what we might call, the creator. And so this is kind of a multi-level way of looking at the world, right? And so we understand through our own studies that thoughts are things, right? And that we create our own reality. We create the universe around us with our thoughts. And on the other hand, the universe is a mental creation of infinite intelligence. And so again, this is my own interpretation of this stuff. I want to hear what you guys think about this. But essentially, the principle of mentalism states that everything is mental. Nothing exists in physical form without first being a thought in your mind, right? And then the second principle is the principle of correspondence. And this is where you get as is above, so is below. As is below, so is above. As is within, so is without. As is without, so is within. Okay? And for me, this speaks to the microcosm and the macrocosm, right? The big picture and the little picture. And of course, when I look at this, I see fractals, right? And so fractals are a great example of the micro and the macro. And the farther in you look, the more it becomes the bigger thing. To me, this concept of as above, so below has a lot to do with, let's say, the influence of celestial bodies on each other and on us, right? And so because again, remember, Hermes was an astronomer and an astrologer. And a lot of what these people studied was as the celestial bodies moved around. And remember, everything has electromagnetism, right? And everything has an influence on everything else. And so as these giant electromagnetic bodies, Saturn, Jupiter, right? And all these things are named after the ancient gods. And I argue that the planets were named after the gods, but really the planets were the gods before there were stories about, Zeus, doing XYZ on planet Earth. Ancient people saw the planets as gods and their influences on each other and their influences on us. And then the other concept that comes up for me is, let's say, disease of the spirit, right, tends to work its way down and manifest through disease of the physical, right? And it kind of works the other way too, right? But if we're not right in our spirit, in our spiritual bodies, then we manifest those things as physical maladies, right? And the opposite holds true too, that what we feel within ourselves, right, radiates out and affects everything outside of us as well. And so through these other principles that we'll go through, because you'll see that essentially these are all tied together, right? All these things all work together. But that's my understanding of the principle of correspondence. I definitely want to hear your thoughts about that. Neville Goddard talks about our inner world and our outer world, right? And your inner world affects your outer world. So that's what that really means to me. And then we have the principle of vibration, right? And nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates, right? And to me, I immediately think about the concept of quantum mechanics and how everything at its most essential, smallest particle level is the same thing, right? And the difference between a chair and a glass of water is about how it vibrates, right? And the frequency at which it vibrates. And this is true for everything in the universe, right? So frequency and vibration. And then, of course, I think about our thoughts. And as we, have thoughts, whether they're positive or negative, right? They go out into the universe in the form of thought waves, right? a lot of people might say brain waves, but it's pretty clear that with EKGs, your brain waves just stay within your skull, but thought waves go out into the universe. And then we also have electromagnetic fields around our body, right? Our heart has a strong electromagnetic field, so does our brain. The things we think, when we say things, right? There's sound. So sound waves are vibration, right? So we talk about, thoughts are things, but words also have power, right? And so the words that we use, right? This is where you get the logos and the aum and the word, right? Because sound vibration actually does go out into the universe forever. If you look into a concept called cymatics, it's about the effect of sound on physical matter. And if you look at things like nebula and gas clouds in the universe, that these are all celestial entities, bodies that are being influenced by vibration, by sound vibration. So, that's fascinating to me. Then we get into the principle of polarity, okay? And of course, when we think of polarity, we think, the yin yang, we think of opposites and poles. And the concept is everything is dual, everything has its poles, everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Think about that for a minute. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Digest that for half a second. Opposites are identical in nature, but are different in degree. Extremes meet, all truths are but half-truths, and all paradoxes can be reconciled. So to me, the way I see this is a couple different ways. When you look at like the swinging of the pendulum, going from this side to that side, going from opposites, it's still, that pendulum is still following its same course. And when you think about what you might call opposites, immediately what comes to mind is maybe light and dark, hot and cold, right? But if you really think about that, where does light become dark? Where does hot become cold? And really it's actually a gradient of the same thing, but of just different degrees. And so hot is on one end of a spectrum and cold is on the other. Light is on one side of a spectrum and dark is on the other. So think about that for a minute. And the ancient Hermeticists used the principle of polarity when they felt that they were, and I've used this myself, and I should say that all of these principles, I've done my best over the years of studying these things on almost a daily basis. I try to identify ways in which I use these principles or employ these principles, whether it's intentional or not. And I think I'd love to hear that from you guys too. If you feel like these principles are a part of your life, even if you didn't know it or consciously try to employ these things. So again, opposites are identical, but different in degree. That's pretty amazing to think about. So these ancient Hermeticists, if they were feeling on one side of a gradient, of a spectrum, they would use their imagination. And this is one of the secrets of personal transformation. They would use their imagination to essentially assume a different state, right? So love and fear, any of those emotional extremes are gradients of the same thing. And so you would just use your imagination and change your state, just like our friend Neville Goddard would say. Then we have the principle of rhythm, okay? And I think about the waves of an ocean, right? And the tides. And this really speaks to the cycles of nature and the seasons, and that there's a time for everything. And there's a time for planting, and there's a time for harvesting. There's a time for reaping, and there's a time for sowing. And to me, in business, I remember hearing maybe Brian Tracy or one of these cool, motivational speaker, success mindset guys talk about not only the planting and reaping and sowing analogy, but this concept of once we understand that everything flows in and out and everything has a rhythm, then you start to anticipate you start to watch when the signs change. And so you know when low tide is, you know when high tide is, you know when you're in a time of plenty, and you know when you're about to go into a time of scarcity. And the whole concept is to be able to prepare for these things so that you're not victimized by circumstances, that you actually are more in tune and you understand the way that the cycles of nature and the cycles in the universe are flowing back and forth around you. So everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. In everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates, right? And so there's this equal and opposite movement in both directions. And that's the understanding of when things are a certain way, they're not going to stay that way forever. And so maybe you plan for when things aren't going to be that way. And to me, this is one of the more powerful concepts in relation to success and business mindset, is understanding. Instead of like, oh, when I lost all my money, or oh, when the stock market crashed, or whatever it is, you watch the signs and you have an understanding that things are about to change. And the more seasons you watch, in theory, the better you get at understanding the signs of when things change. For me, as a wilderness guide, as an outfitter, and somebody who lives out in nature, we have a seasonal lifestyle. We have real changes of season here. We can have 20 below zero winters, and all the local people out here, all summer long, they're gathering firewood because they know that winter is only a few months around the corner. And if you don't winterize your house, and if you don't get firewood, well, here comes winter and you're going to get smacked around. So there's also a multi-generational wisdom that goes with seasonality as well. So then we have the principle of cause and effect. I think this is our friend John Lavenia's favorite, maybe. John, you can talk about that if you want. But John's always telling us to be cause, and don't be the effect, right? Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. I would say maybe a version of that is nothing happens by coincidence, right? There's a reason for everything. Nothing happens by chance. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. You could call this karma. Karma is really the law of cause and effect. A lot of people think karma has to do with you're being punished for something you did, but the reality is it's the cause of the law of cause and effect. Every action has a reaction, right? And much better to be cause and be causation and make things happen, take action and make things happen in our lives, than become victims of circumstances, people, events in our lives. And so many people, of course, are like, oh, this happened to me, right? And they don't take any personal responsibility for decisions that they've made that may have set wheels in motion that caused things to happen. So to me, this is one of the most powerful, because this is the call to action for us as well, to be cause in our lives, in our world, and that we can make real change in our lives. And then the final one is the principle of gender, right? And maybe a month ago, we talked about the alchemical marriage and the union of the masculine and feminine within us, right? And so I think Napoleon Hill either called it the principle of sex in his book, Think and Grow Rich. And maybe if somebody remembers a little more about that chapter. But to me, this is the concept of the union of the masculine and the feminine within ourselves, but also understanding that everything in the universe has a masculine and a feminine aspect to it. And it's not just man, woman. It's not, a superficial way of looking at that, but every single thing in the universe has masculine and feminine qualities. Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles, and gender manifests on all planes. And in the Kabbalion, it says, the principles of truth are 7. He or she who knows these understandingly possesses the magic key, before whose touch all the doors of the temple fly open. And really all this to me is just a reminder, and we all need reminders, right? That we are infinite, limitless, magical beings that are co-creators in our own lives and are in control of our own destinies. And we have the ability to create the lives that we want for ourselves and for those around us. And so this final photo just kind of, again, to me is just a reminder that we are cosmic and we are infinite. And there you go. That is my little presentation for today on the 7 Hermetic principles of self-mastery and the origins of law of attraction. So I'm going to stop share, and I want to hear what you guys have to think, have to say about some of these principles, and if there was one or two or all of them that spoke to you and you jotted down some stuff, or just, you know, things came to your mind about any of these things. Because again, that was just my kind of interpretation and how I employ these things in my life. And I'm going to flip it to the master, John Lavenia.
Hey, what's up, brother?
What's up,
Thank
dude?
you. Thank
Hey.
you for that. I haven't read the Kabbalion in a long time. So great reminders. You know, obviously cause and effect is one that I attempt to remember when I'm feeling like I'm the effect. Right. So all this stuff is for use. You know, philosophy. What is philosophy? It's you know, study of the basic truths of life. Right. So here's how stuff works. And but am I working with it? Am I working with the law? Like the book Raymond Hollywell, which we read. So great stuff. And at the same time, while, you know, we call this Hermeticism, right? We could also say it's you know, a secular, at this point, right, thousands of years old, a secular approach to philosophy. And we could see where this is leaked into not only different aspects of our life, if we're studying the basic truths, but also has, I guess, been augmented or focused on in different ways with different, more modern, you know, than 3,000 years, more modern religions and stuff. So the end result for me is the result. It's not the path. It's the, you know, the fruit of being on the path. And so anyway, thank you. You're so studious. I thought I knew a lot about the details and this and that. You.
Hey, guy.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And really, I appreciate that perspective, because yeah, I think maybe this could be intimidating, like, yeah, the Hermeticism or whatever. Like, no, man, these are ancient truths that have found their way through, like I said, through all the religions, all the philosophies. And I think that we all employ these to a large degree without even knowing it or understanding it. It doesn't matter what you call it. So yeah, thank you for that. And I you know, when I do these talks, I mean, it becomes an exercise in you know, studiism for me going through it. But at the same time, yeah, I want to translate this into just stuff that works for us, and things that can be practical in our lives. So thank you. Anybody else? I want to hear what you guys have to say about this, because you know, that was a lot of stuff, man. I mean, again, this is like thousands of years of ancient wisdom, you know, in a little chat. Come on, bring it. What of those principles stuck out to you guys? What resonated with you? Gail, let's hear it.
I'm not a wise person like you are, but something in the beginning, you talked about how everything vibrates and everything has its own vibration. That took me back to when I was a young teenager, and somebody was talking to me about, vibrations, and the chair that you see there is really not solid, it vibrates, and everything you see is not solid. And I thought that they're crazy. What are they thinking? Yeah. But I do believe it is, it is that way now. So you took me back to those times. And then there was something else I wanted to talk about, and right now I can't think of it. And I didn't write it down. If I remember, I'll come back to you.
You better jump back in.
Yeah.
No, I think that's wonderful. And, again, I remember that too from my youth. Oh yeah, it's all vibration, dude. No, it's good vibes and whatever.
Yeah.
But then here comes quantum mechanics and blows our minds and actually proves that all that stuff is actually true, right? And so even these things from thousands of years ago that these people knew, it all has been proven by modern science that, these small little particles that are smaller than atoms and all these things, they're all essentially the same. And depending on how fast something vibrates and at what frequency it vibrates, it's this or it's that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a rock, it's a river, but it's all the same stuff. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Right. Mandy,
the thing that I just suddenly remembered was that I'm amazed how all of this has been passed down to our times today. You think that the things that we see and live by now are new to this time, but you're pointing out, from way back thousands and thousands of years ago, and how it's all been passed down in one form or another. And it's just amazing to me.
Well, I feel fortunate that we have the ability, and whether it's through the internet or just through the fact that this information has been released into the mainstream, because again, you go back thousands of years, and I was pretty clear to say that if you weren't in the club, you didn't know this stuff. This was initiate only. And guess what? And if you told somebody this stuff, like for what that presentation I just did, I'd be a dead man, right? Or whatever.
I just imagine some of I wondered why you weren't going to be recording this. This is
so
why,
I'm so glad that we live in this time that we have access to this information. So I'm right there with you. Thank you, Gail. All right, Mandy, what's up?
Hi, Stuart. Right, okay, now I'm trying to put it into some sort of order here. I love it when you do all these sort of things, going back into the olden times, because it recently, and I think I did a bit before. So I've been looking at the numerology, astrology I've looked at before, and tarot and all that lot. I'm very skeptical in some bits, but when you mention it, it starts to make more sense. So, and there's lots of, quite a few of these. I'd say there's about 3 of these that stuck out for me. With the astrology that's coming through at the moment, it's like she's saying things like, oh, what was it she's got on here? So Mars is in Taurus and Venus is sextiles with Chiron and all this lot. And they say that, this one's coming out in energy from this one, energy from this one. So that's sort of really interesting on it. But the bits that I think I pick out the most are polarity, cause and effect, vibration, and gender. So just taking each of those. And it's also, like you say, it's been brought forward, and other people are doing this, but saying it in a slightly different way. So Tony Robbins picks on the polarity side of it as well. He's mentioned about polarity and changing your state. And he says you can change your state like that. And he can show you it, because if somebody turns around to you and says, show me what it looks like to be sad, you'll go and you'll look sad. Now show me what it likes to look happy, and you can look happy. And that's just showing you can change it like this. But it's very hard to do in practice, but you can do it, because you are in control of what your state is. It is all a matter of mind, whether you're happy or sad. And I really got to work on that a lot more, but it is there, and movement changes your state and everything else. And also with the masculine and feminine and gender, it was very much, you see it as masculine and feminine people, but it's more the energy that's around each one. And he brought that up as well. And I can't remember if he's talking about, I think you need the opposite, but I'm not sure. I can't remember if you both have to be in a masculine state or one has to be masculine, one is feminine, but it's the energy that you're bringing to it. the energy around those areas that's the importance. And then cause and effect. Yeah, I mean, this big thing about this happened to me. It's not we did something, and I can look into things that I've done and say, okay, I did that. That's led to that. And yeah, it's so much that it's not. We mustn't sit here and be the victim. We've got to be out there making calls and trying to do things. But the vibration one is the one that really holds for me, and that was really brought to the fore by Bob Proctor in the book that we were reading recently, and that you're just finishing. And as Ali and I would have long conversations about that, because it's just amazing. And the fact that, yes, it's so true, you know, that the glass of water and the rock and everything else in the chair, that, you know, everything, if we put it under a microscope, we are vibrating. And that you've got to be at that same level of vibration to make things like that happen in the world. And my son's really interested in quantum stuff. So he wants to be a quantum astrologist, I think, whatever. But so, you know, down to those small levels. And it just, you can see it really amazes me. I love it. And that vibration thing just so strong that you're putting that vibration and the positive notions out into the universe. And it's all about the energy, and that we're all energy. And it can't be destroyed, it goes out there. And it's really funny, and I don't just link, but I was talking to somebody last night because at MenCap I help out, and we were talking about Wi-Fi, because I'd sent him a picture of something, but it wasn't coming to his phone. And I said, well, they probably set your phone so it only works on Wi-Fi, because they've got learning disabilities. So I said, it probably only works on Wi-Fi, otherwise it's going to take a lot of your data. And I said to him, so it's up here somewhere in the ether, and it's coming, and it's going to come back down. And I said, it's amazing, isn't it? Because I've sent this picture, and it's like it's sitting there somewhere waiting to come down. And when you go into your house, it's going to come down to you as you get through the door. And he messaged me later and said, it's just come down as I walked through the door. He said, it's there. And it's just like, I've seen it all come through, and his WhatsApp thing brought me this picture through. And it's amazing, just things like that, isn't it? I mean, what's out there? So thank you for all these. I love it. Yeah, I really do.
You just brought up this whole thing that information is a thing, right? And like what we think is, I mean, it used to be like, oh, a TV picture that was broadcast, and like it goes through the ethers and through the air, and then you get this picture on your screen. But yeah, you send somebody a picture or information or data through Wi-Fi, they're now finding this whole thing about information as it crosses the event horizon into a black hole. And at a certain point, that information or that data disappears completely. But just at that threshold, they're able to replicate that and save that data, because this whole concept of the law of thermodynamics, nothing is created or destroyed. And so at some point, where does that information go, and how is it stored? And so this is fascinating stuff. We're just on the cusp of understanding, or barely understanding, these things. Thank you, Mandy. That was awesome. My friend Glenn from Brooklyn. What's up, buddy?
Dr. Wilde, what's happening? Good to see you, man.
Good to see you, man. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We had some fun yesterday. One of the things that you just mentioned resonated and resonated again. And that is cause and effect. We've talked about this before. By the way, has anyone read this book yet? You probably want to try to find a way to read this book at some point. You know what? I am so sorry. My doctor's calling. I got to take this call.
All right, we'll come back to you. Bob and Missy, I know you're driving, but I want to hear what's up with you guys. And I see Catherine. Oh, Bob, you got to unmute if you want to talk. Easy there, hands-free, buddy.
Oh, there we go.
All right.
There we go.
Look at this, not on the couch today. Love it.
Stuart has just called on us. Your timing could not be better.
Stuart, I agree. I didn't hear any of it.
I agree too.
Well, I don't know if you've ever read Richard Feynman, also from Long Island. He was one of the great physicists of the 1940s. He was at Los Alamos, and he gets into this in his book. Surely you're joking, Mr. Feynman. You should read the book. And everything that is vibrating has changed our whole world. It was suppressed from us for 1,000 years, maybe. I mean, look what they did to Tesla, for God's sakes. So I'm going to look at the beginning of this when I get a chance, and I'm sorry that I'm being so ignorant to speak right now.
No, you know what you just said is so true. And this harkens back to this concept of secret knowledge, hidden knowledge, only the initiates. Back in the day, I mean, we had this elite priesthood, essentially, right? And the knowledge and information that was kept from the regular people was just the simple things like numbers and counting. Because if you could count, guess what? You could count the days between solstices. You could count the days between when to plant and when to harvest. And if you were the ancient priesthood that wanted to control the masses, you kept everybody in the dark, so that then they would bring you all of your food, tithings, pay tribute to the priests and things like that. They would know, once you knew how to count and you could watch the stars, then you actually knew when the eclipses were. You knew when celestial events would happen, and you could do this whole, we're going to make the sun go away, right? And then here comes the moon, covers the sun, and then everybody says, oh my God, make it go back, put the light back, okay, and we'll do that. And like, you just have to give us all your food, and give us a percentage of your yield. And really, this is where a lot of this stuff originally comes from. And then as time went on, and more of this sort of spiritual, esoteric understandings of the universe, but the same concept applies. Catherine, I'm looking at you. What do you think about this stuff?
I thought this was fascinating. I've actually been in another group recently. We've been studying Torah and how to study the cycles of the seasons, biblically and all of that. And so I thought it was really fascinating just from that perspective. And it also, on a more personal note for me, because I'm coming to a different cycle in my life, different season in my life, is that I'm, in old terminology, I'm becoming the crone, I'm leaving aside the mother years and becoming the crone. So this was a fascinating topic. Thank you for this one.
You're welcome, wise woman. Very nice. All right, back to our friend Glenn Henderson without his Mets memorabilia.
Well, it's coming. I'm still decorating the office, so stay tuned. That wasn't actually my doctor. Apparently, the spammers have now figured out how to spoof my doctor's phone number. So there you go. Now, I was reminded, you were talking about cause and effect, and I know we're about to wrap up here. This principle, which is at once sobering, enormously sobering, and enormously liberating. It's why I mentioned this book. It's in the chapter 5 of this book by Mike Hernacki. The Ultimate Secret to Getting Absolutely Everything You Want says, in order to get that, though, first of all, we need to recognize, it says, that you alone are the source of all the conditions and situations in your life. You said, it was mentioned earlier that, we've all been reminded that we've got to be at cause in our life rather than at the effect. It's actually much deeper than that. And it's an inescapable fact that whether we like it or not, we are at cause in our own life. So there's no such thing as, why does this keep happening to me? The answer is exactly. Because, and boy, I tell you, this was the ultimate punching myself in the face. When the moment I realized that everything in my life, currently the state of my health, my professional life, my personal relationships, my finances, everything in my life is a direct result of a choice that I have made previously. Oh my God, you mean it's all my fault? No. It's all my responsibility. I am responsible for every single solitary circumstance and situation in my life, which is not to say I'm to blame. I catch my words. We talked about this before. I am responsible. And if we transpose the usual understanding of the meaning of that word, it means that I have the ability to respond. To response ability. So that's wonderfully freeing as well. This whole principle of cause and effect that people say, oh, it's karma, it always happens. Well, You don't like what your life looks like? Change it. Simple as that. And you know, if that sounds harsh, if that sounds cold-hearted, good. Because it means that I have the control of my circumstances and my future in my own hands. So I no longer get to blame anything or anyone else for my circumstances. And that's also wonderfully liberating because I get to decide what my circumstances are going to be. And that's true for you, Stuart, and for all of us here. And the sooner we recognize this existing fact, the sooner we get to take back our own power over our life and over our future. Thanks. Back to you, Stuart.
Yeah, I mean, I agree wholeheartedly. And, you know, I'm a fan of personal responsibility, let's say, and accountability. And that's, I think, the law, the principle of cause and effect, because everything's a law, right? I like the fact that they call these principles.
Yeah, you said that before, didn't you? One of the things on your sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
Chance, what we call chance is simply law not recognized. Nice.
Love it. Yeah, I think that there's something very powerful and empowering on a personal level to claim responsibility for every circumstance and event that has ever occurred in your life. And I agree with you 1000% that vocabulary is everything in this sense. And at least when I'm conscious of the words that I use and selective about the words that I use, the word blame, the word fault, don't, you know, and one of these days we will do, 50 words to remove from your vocabulary or whatever. Because I really, really believe that not, you know, again, words have power, words vibrate at different things. And this is, you know, going back to ancient mantras and prayers that were specifically scientifically designed to vibrate at a certain frequency and put out certain energy into the universe, right? And there's something about, like, I think depending on where you're at in your life, if you're all about the pity party and still in this place of self-indulgence, as Don Juan a la Carlos Castaneda would say, feeling sorry for yourself and not wanting to take personal responsibility, you know, then when someone says, well, you know, and I know this from having children and, you know, oh, this happened to me and, oh, you know, my life sucks or this or that or whatever. And my question is always like, well, what decisions have you made that led to this experience happening? And it's always, you know, what do you mean it's my fault? And well, you're blaming me. And I think we all know people like that in our lives, or maybe we've been like that in our lives, right? And I think there's great power in taking responsibility back for the events in your life. And it doesn't mean that it's not this blaming the victim thing, right? It's not like, oh, this happened to you, and so, you know, it's your fault or whatever. But I think if we were to look at every circumstance in our lives, everyone, good, bad, whatever, that it's all due to decisions and choices and actions that we've taken or not taken in our lives. So thank you for that, Glenn. Absolutely. Linda, what's up? What do you say about
Hey,
this?
Stuart. Great presentation. Great reminders. What's coming up for me is, I mean, like Gail, I mean, it just blew my mind that this has been around for thousands and thousands of years. I had no idea, and that it was kept secret from us. And, you know, I've only become aware of these things recently myself. And that's what's coming up for me is the awareness. Like, if we don't have the awareness of these things, then we don't have that power to make changes in our lives, to stop ourselves from being that angry person or that sad person. The fact that, you know, we're all connected with this universal mind. I mean, I didn't know this, you know, this is, again, it's all about the awareness of this stuff. And, you know, you just brought that forward again today. And we need to tie all of these things together in order to be successful in life. It's not just about the one thing, you know, the law, and they're all tied together. So, But that's what was coming up for me. It's just the power of the awareness.
Thank you. You know, you again, you brought up an interesting point. I mean, I think that this is by design, going back thousands of years, and we can talk about how that same intention to keep us in the dark or to keep us from achieving our full potential or realizing our power and realizing that we have control and that we can change. Because I think that, you know, if you want to talk about the powers that shouldn't be or whatever it is, and that the people that would like to think that they you know, have control over our lives, right? They don't want us to understand that we are infinite, powerful beings, right? They want to keep us in this very closed little bubble of experience and understanding. And, you know, without getting political about anything, I think that that's the intention behind all this from thousands of years ago. And I think it still rings true today to a large degree. So, wow, guys, thank you everybody. Thanks so much for joining me today. Really great to see you guys, and thank you for all of your participation and contribution. And this was really fun for me. And thank you for letting me share this information with you guys. So what a great time I have with you guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I will sign off here, and we'll see you tomorrow for a general session on the John Lavenia Success Mastermind. Cheers to everybody. God bless you guys. Get stuff done. Have a great day. Bye-bye.